Welcome to the channel for the first time viewers. Welcome back from my existing subscribers. Today we're going to talk about God of War. I'm going to give you my review of the game and also tell you some of the basic points that I really liked about it and some things that I feel like they could have done a little bit better. All right, so without further ado, I'm just going to give you a little background. I don't really do a lot of reviews on this channel, but I am going to start, and the premise of my reviews is pretty much going to be only games that I have. So if I have a game and I've either played a lot of it, more than 10 hours is going to be essentially my threshold before I give somebody an impression or a review of a game. I'm going to go ahead and make reviews of them. So moving forward, whenever I get a game, after I put in about 10 plus hours or beaten it, depending on how much I'm playing the game, then I'll go ahead and drop a review for you guys and let you guys know what I'm thinking of the game, whether or not I feel you should get it. And we'll go from there. So the first thing that jumps out in the God of War game is the new camera angle. And I'm going to talk about the graphics, right? It's one of the best looking games as far as graphics go. And as far as some people saying it's your everyday run of the mill graphics. Yes, there are some games that look better at times, right? But this game looks consistently good the entire time you're playing it, and almost no matter what, right? So there's certain games where let's say for instance Far Cry, when you get into the woods and your frames start to drop, everything gets a little choppy and the graphics aren't as nice as they are when you're in a nicer open area. Okay, whereas this game, the graphics are solid the entire time you're playing. And one thing I have to point out is how everything feels like it's its own entity, right? So from the armor to the axe to Kratos himself to Atreus to everything going on in the level, everything feels like it's its own little elements within the game itself, versus a stiff armor characteristic, or something specific that is fixated and doesn't actually move. You can see the armor jiggling. You can see everything that breaks down to the point where it just feels alive, and that's the best way I can explain. It's hard for me to explain, but everything just feels alive in this game as far as the graphics go. Now I want to talk about the gameplay. One of the things that I really like about this game is the fighting mechanics. I feel like it's very fluid, and the further you go into the game, the better it gets, right? So without spoiling, there's a really big nod to the older fans later on in the game. I don't have any gameplay of that, but it enhances the fighting mechanics a lot. So hopefully you guys get to that point of the game and get to enjoy it. But with that said, the fighting is really crisp. The combos are smooth. They're easy to execute. And it's not really hard to master multiple moves and when to use them. So switching in and out of weapons is very easy as well. And using Atreus is a breeze. So essentially you point to what you want him to shoot and you press square and he just pretty much shoots his arrow there. They give you a couple different types of arrows throughout the game, and you could use them to interact with the environment, which adds another element. So like if you're fighting a tough enemy and he goes by something that can explode, you would use a specific type of arrow to shoot that and it will damage the enemy. So that is how the combat kind of works for me. And the parry system is pretty cool, but that's more or less the same parry system we've come to expect from everything. You time when they're going to hit. That's not very unique to me. That's kind of just the same as Assassin's Creed. You time when they're going to hit you, and then you can kind of counter that by just pressing block at the right time. So that part is okay, but that is in just about every other game. But the combo tree is actually really deep, and you really don't see a lot of games with that variety of moves. With that said, the camera angle does become sometimes a problem, and maybe if they brought it back just a little bit or gave you the option to play a little further back, then the combat would be a little bit better in my opinion. It's still perfect or close to perfect right now, but because the camera's so close, sometimes when you start fighting a lot of people, as you can see the threat indicator there, you have to really pay attention to that because you can't really see everybody. And later on in the game, one of the things that makes fighting or combat in God of War a challenge is that it's not scripted. Like in a lot of games, they take turns hitting you. Like they'll wait, one person will hit you, another person will just be standing there. and then another person will do their combo. And if you're just paying attention to who's attacking next, then it's easy to kind of defeat multiple enemies. Versus God of War, where everybody just does their own thing and they're attacking you at their own pace. And sometimes you'll have two people doing their specials, and let's say you counter one, the second one hits you, and you're pretty much screwed. So that makes it a lot more difficult balancing when to counter, when to evade, and it just makes you think a lot more when you're fighting. But bringing the camera back a little bit more would be one of those things that could do a little bit more justice to the game. However, for cinematic purposes, the camera where it's at 99% of the time is perfect. Right? It's just when multiple people are around and you have to rely on a threat indicator to see where everybody else is at. All right. Well, that's the combat and the camera mechanics part of it. So let's go ahead and talk about how fun the game actually is to play. So if you know anything about me, then you know I like to play first-person shooters and the occasional story game. But essentially, the reason I like those games and I gravitate towards first-person shooters is because there's always something to shoot at. There's always something to do. I have a relatively short attention span, but the combat in this game, it gives you something to look forward to. So that makes that aspect of the game very, very fun. It's also not just all button mashing. So it's not like every 10 seconds you're in a fight. There's some points where you figure out puzzles. There's some points where there's nothing going on and you're kind of traveling to your next objective. And there's other times where you're in the craziest fights of your life. And that mix and that balance to me is what kept me engaged and kept me going throughout the course of the game. They also do a good job of spacing out the boss fights and the tougher enemy fights, because not everybody's a boss. But there are some really tough enemies in the game, and I think they do a really good job of kind of spacing them out. Like right when you feel like you're about to hit a dull point, you fight another tough enemy, on top of some side challenges that have some of the toughest enemies that I've ever played in the game. Having beat the game today, and that is a rare thing that I do, especially with these single player games, I usually play them a ton, and then eventually it fizzles out and I go back to playing my main game, which is Siege, or back in the day, it'd be Call of Duty. But after beating this game today, I would just definitely, without a shadow of doubt, almost every gamer would benefit from playing this game and having this game in their library. It's just one of those games. Just like some people, there's movies you have to see. This is kind of like that game that you have to play. If you don't, it's not the end of the world, but you'll definitely be missing out on one of the better games of this generation as far as graphics, gameplay, story, and just everything combined together. So you don't want to be that person. But if you know, $60 is a big tag and you're maybe looking to save some money, then definitely pick it up on sale or get it at some point. They have some specials at GameStop and stuff like that where you can, get an extra trade bonus towards God of War. So I don't know, man. Depending on how you get it, I would definitely recommend getting it at least. And whether you get it now or later, definitely experience this story. The advantage of getting it now, though, is that you'll avoid a lot of the spoilers that will eventually come out. I mean, everybody's been pretty tight-lipped. Some people are starting to do their series of how the game breaks down and their entire playthroughs. I chose to do just a 1-hour playthrough, and I will be releasing more information later on. But essentially, I just wanted everybody to experience this game mostly for themselves. So on the first day, I did an hour gameplay. And this is my review. If I had to score it, I would give it a 10 out of 10. And like I said just now, I recommend that you pick this game up. All right, you guys take it easy. I will catch you in the next video. And leave me some feedback on how you felt about this review. All right, catch you later.